Welcome to EnglishPass Podcast, brought to you from our local studio in Calgary. I'm your host, Samantha, and today we're diving into an exciting topic, talking about prices. Whether you're a beginner or intermediate learner, in this podcast, we're helping you level up your English listening and reading skills. And before we get started, let me tell you that the sponsor of this episode is TypeFit, keyboard typing practice and learning service. Today, we're exploring something really interesting, talking about prices. This is an engaging subject for English learners because it covers a lot of practical vocabulary and real-world situations. So let's dive right in. Talking about prices is a fundamental skill in any language because it connects directly to our daily survival and our interactions with the world around us. At its simplest level, discussing prices involves asking how much an item costs. But as we dive deeper into the English language, we find a rich landscape of vocabulary, cultural norms, and psychological strategies that influence how these conversations happen. To understand how to talk about prices effectively, one must first master the basic questions. We often start with the classic phrase, "How much is this?" or "How much does that cost?" However, in more formal or professional settings, you might hear people ask for the valuation of an item or inquire about the retail price. Retail refers to the price a regular consumer pays at a shop, as opposed to the wholesale price, which is the lower price paid by businesses when they buy in large quantities. Understanding this distinction is vital because it explains why things cost what they do. When we begin to describe prices, we use a variety of adjectives to convey our feelings about the cost. For an intermediate learner, the jump from using simple words like cheap or expensive to more nuanced terms is a major milestone. For instance, if something is affordable, it means it fits well within your budget without causing financial stress. On the other hand, if a price is described as steep, it means it is higher than expected, though perhaps still manageable. If you find something that is priced far too high for its actual value, you might call it exorbitant or even a ripoff. Conversely, a great price is often called a bargain or even a steal. It is interesting to note that the word cheap can sometimes have a negative connotation in English. While it usually means low in price, it can also suggest that the item is of poor quality. If you want to say something is low cost but still good quality, the word inexpensive is often a safer and more polite choice. To see these concepts in action, let us look at some real-world examples. Imagine you are standing in a local coffee shop. This is a very common place to talk about prices. You might look at the menu and see a latte listed for $5. Here, the transaction is straightforward and the price is fixed. You would say, "I would like a latte, please," and the barista would tell you the total. However, the conversation changes if you decide to add extra flavors or alternative milks. You might ask, "Is there an extra charge for oat milk?" This phrase, extra charge, is a key vocabulary term meaning an additional cost added to the base price. The barista might reply that it is an additional 50 cents. In this setting, the price is not something you would ever try to change or negotiate. You simply accept it or choose not to buy. Moving to a different scenario, consider the experience of buying a used car. This is an environment where the sticker price, the price displayed on the window, is rarely the final price you pay. Here, the vocabulary of negotiation becomes essential. You might look at the car and say, "The price seems a bit high given the mileage." Is there any room for movement on this figure? In this context, room for movement is a polite way to ask if the seller is willing to lower the price. The seller might respond with a counteroffer, which is a new, lower price intended to reach an agreement. Negotiating a price requires a balance of being firm but respectful, and it often involves phrases like, "What is your best price?" or "Would you take $5,000 for it?" This process of back-and-forth discussion to reach a price is often called haggling or bargaining. Historically, the way we talk about prices has changed significantly. Before the mid-19th century, fixed prices were actually quite rare in many parts of the world. In most shops, you would have to bargain for every single item you wanted to buy. It was only with the rise of the modern department store, specifically businesses like Wanamakers in the United States, that the one-price system became standard. This was a revolutionary idea at the time because it meant that every customer paid the same amount for the same item, regardless of their social status or their ability to argue. This shift simplified the language of shopping, moving it away from intense negotiation toward a simple exchange of information about the fixed cost. However, in many cultures today, haggling remains the standard way to discuss prices. If you were visiting a vibrant street market in a city like Istanbul or Bangkok, you would find that the initial price mentioned by a vendor is merely a starting point for a conversation. If you simply paid the first price mentioned, the vendor might actually be surprised. In these settings, you use phrases like, "That is a bit more than I wanted to spend," or "Can you give me a discount if I buy two?" A discount is a reduction in the original price. Cultural fluency in these situations means knowing when it is appropriate to push for a lower price and when it is considered rude. Generally, in large malls or grocery stores, prices are fixed, but in small markets or for high-ticket items like furniture and jewelry, there is often space to talk. Another important layer of talking about prices involves understanding hidden costs, particularly taxes. This is a major area of confusion for many people traveling to the United States. In many countries, the price you see on a shelf is the total amount you will pay at the register because the value-added tax, VAT, is already included. However, in the U.S., sales tax is usually added at the end of the transaction. If you see a shirt for $20, you might find yourself paying $21.60 at the counter. When talking about prices in this context, it is helpful to ask, does this include tax? Knowing the difference between the gross price, the total, and the net price, the price before extras, is a high-level skill that prevents surprises at the checkout. There is also a psychological element to how prices are communicated. Have you ever wondered why so many prices end in 99 cents? This is known as charm pricing. Our brains tend to focus on the first digit of a price, so $9.99 feels significantly cheaper than $10, even though the difference is only 1 penny. When we discuss these prices, we often round them up in our heads, but the marketing impact remains. When you are describing a price to a friend, you might say, "It was just under $10, which sounds much more appealing than saying it cost $10. Let us look at a fourth example involving subscription services, which are very common today for things like streaming movies or gym memberships. Here, we talk about recurring costs or monthly fees. You might ask a friend, "How much is your monthly subscription for that app?" They might respond that it is a flat fee, meaning the price stays the same every month and covers everything. Or they might mention that there are tiered prices. Tiered pricing means there are different levels of service at different price points. For example, a basic plan might be $10, while a premium plan with more features might be $20. This adds the concept of value for money to the conversation. You aren't just talking about the price, you are talking about whether the features you get are worth the extra expense. In the world of high-end luxury goods, the language of price becomes even more specific. If you were looking at a designer watch or a rare piece of art, you might not even see a price tag. In these circles, people often say, if you have to ask the price, you cannot afford it. This is a common English idiom used to suggest that something is incredibly expensive and exclusive. When the price is finally discussed, it might be referred to as an investment. This shifts the focus from the money being spent to the long-term value the item will hold. Someone might say, "This bag is a real investment piece," implying that even though the initial cost is high, it will last for a long time or even increase in value. Common misconceptions also exist when discussing prices. One common mistake is confusing the word price with the word cost. While they are often used interchangeably, there is a subtle difference. Price is usually the amount of money a customer pays to a seller. Cost, however, often refers to the amount of money a business spends to produce something. For example, the price of a burger might be $5, but the cost to the restaurant to make that burger, including the meat, the bread, and the labor, might only be $2. When you understand this, you can talk about the profit margin, which is the difference between the cost and the price. To round out our understanding, let us consider a final example: the housing market. Talking about prices for houses or apartments involves some of the most complex vocabulary in the language. You might discuss the asking price, which is what the seller wants, and the closing price, which is what the buyer actually pays. You might also hear about being underpriced or overpriced. If a house is underpriced, it is listed for less than what it is truly worth, often to start a bidding war. A bidding war happens when many people want to buy the same thing and keep offering higher and higher prices. In this situation, the price can skyrocket quickly. Mastering the language of prices allows you to navigate the world with confidence. Whether you are asking for a discount at a local market, understanding the hidden taxes on a vacation, or negotiating your salary for a new job, which is essentially setting the price for your time and skills, clear communication about money is essential. By moving beyond simple numbers and incorporating words like reasonable, markup, and value, you can express your needs and understand others more effectively in any economic situation. In the end, talking about prices is not just about the numbers themselves, but about the relationship between what we give and what we receive in return. It is a constant dialogue about what we value as individuals and as a society. And that's all for today's episode of EnglishPass Podcast. I hope you found this helpful. Remember to practice what you've learned and don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how we improve. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and join us next time. Let me remind you that the sponsor of the episode is TypeFit, and I suggest to check the link at the description. I'm Samantha, and I'm excited to be your host for many more fascinating episodes to come. Until then, keep learning and keep growing. Goodbye.